Good morning, or good afternoon, or maybe even good evening, depending on where you're watching from. It's time for a live event. We are going to kind of feel like we're rushing the holidays just a bit because I flipped the calendar and it's only November, but you know, as quilter in the quilt world, that if we don't start ahead of time, we will not finish before Christmas Eve. So our project today is called the I got to remember the name of my own project, Letters to Santa. And it's a little bag that we're creating that can be used in a couple of different ways. My original thought was that I would put in notepads and envelopes and fun pens and things so that my grandkids could write letters to Santa. So we've got a notepad, we've got envelopes and some fun color ink pen, and they could write letters to Santa. So it's got an opening in the very center, and then it has an opening on each side like an envelope. So this is going to be our project today. I am Colleen Tauke, and I'm your instructor for this project. And we are going to be walking through how to put together this fun little bag that then can either hang on the door, it can hang on a doorknob, you can put up a little hook to use it kind of as a decoration also. But for those letters to Santa that need to be, postmarked pretty soon as kids start thinking about all the things they want for Christmas, or you could maybe even write down your Christmas wish list and put in here. I know my husband and I are always sharing Christmas wish lists. He also has a birthday before Christmas too that we have to think about. But what is on that wish list or ideas? So a fun way to kind of get into the Christmas spirit. Remember to pop into the comment section. I need to open it so I can see my comments too. There we go. So that we know where you're watching from. We love to bring together our community from all over the world. We usually have watchers from the UK, Australia, Canada, as well as all over the United States. So pop in and tell us where you're watching from today. Now, this project, originally, my inspiration was 5-inch charms. We know that when we shop for fabric, whether it's online or in person in the quilt shops, we find those pre-cut packs of 5-inch squares. And they are just adorable. And it has fabrics from an entire, coordinated from an entire fabric line. And a lot of times at Christmas, the Christmas prints will also get made into charms like this. Some shops even will create their own set of 5-inch charms. And you can use those for this project. So the math works out. So the pattern for letters to Santa, the Santa bag, will be in the comment section, and there'll be a QR code that you can follow for getting the pattern for this. But those 5-inch charms are going to be the perfect size for this. But if you're like me and you're shopping, and I always find some adorable Christmas prints, and you can see I bought yardage of these. I thought these were so fun. Kind of a really traditional Santa, that traditional Christmas candy that I'm not even sure I like, but I like the looks of it. And it reminds me, this ribbon candy especially reminds me of the 70s and the late 60s. A fun Christmas tree cutout design. And then I coordinated, since I had these in my stash, I went through and I coordinated, you know me, if you watch it all, stripes and a plaid. How much fun is a stripe or a plaid to put into a project, just to kind of create motion so that your eye kind of jumps around. Let's see, Kelly from Arizona says hello. We've got Susan saying good morning from Kansas. Lisa from Wisconsin. We are so glad that you're joining in. Terry says hello. Love this bag. Would not use it for Santa letters, but was thinking it might be useful for my smaller rulers for traveling. That's a great idea too, because it's got extra pouches and it will protect our rulers from being damaged on the corners, or to scrape, if they scrape on the back, to remove any of the lines. Because when we put those smaller rulers into a big carry-on or a big bag, we're always worried about they're going to shift around and the corners are going to get digged. Perfect use. You can shift it from Christmas fabric to sewing prints or your favorite colorway to make a ruler bag. That's a really great inspiration. I love when I give you an idea and you all just take it and run with it a million different directions. That's fabulous. Okay, I had also thought that this would be, if you don't have small children in your world right now, this could be a place that you put those Christmas cards and letters that you get from friends. Now, I'm not sure that a lot of Christmas cards are sent anymore. I get a lot of Christmas letters and I get a lot of Christmas photos. So that's a great place that you can collect them in one place and then share them with family and friends later. So we can use it for letters to Santa. We could use it for the mailbag of our own things that come in, and we could stash them there. And you could put the cards that you get and letters you get from friends in the outside pockets. And if you're like me, I write out a few Christmas cards, get them ready to go, send them off, put away the excess cards, and then I never remember where I put them. And I get a card or a letter from someone, and oops, I didn't send them one. Put a few extra cards in the middle with their envelope. And then if one comes in at the last minute, you've got the card in the envelope to send one in return without having to go look for the leftover cards that you stashed someplace, but you don't remember where you stashed them. So keep them right handy, close at hand to use. Sylvia says, hello from Michigan. Okay, so these 5-inch squares that we're going to either cut from that delicious Christmas fabric that we found that we just couldn't leave in the stores, or our 5-inch charms that we purchased. We're going to be using 25 of them for our project. And I've got a project in one joined together as a top. So I'll bring that over so you can see. I've arranged, in my original, I just kind of randomly put my blocks together. I just kind of scattered my reds and greens, but another way to approach it might be to make diagonal rows of different fabrics. And I didn't use as many in this one, but I did get my stripe in there. So we're going to create, or not 25, we're going to do 4 by 4. Oh, I didn't actually put this together right. I need 5 by 5. Okay, this is going to be a little smaller in order to fit it into the camera picture. That's what I was doing. So the original pattern calls for 5 across and 5 rows. I've got 4 by 4. That's another option. As long as your project is square, when you start, you can create a bag this way. Now, some of you might look at this design and say, that looks a little familiar. Quite a few years ago, I don't remember exactly when, this idea came about using just a simple 10.5-inch square of fabric. And it was whole cloth, so that you use 2 prints. There's one on the inside, one on the outside, and it's not pieced. This is one 10.5-inch square. And the same stitching and manipulation happens on this as what we're going to do on our bag. So if you want to make a little pouch, maybe for earbuds, a charging cord, those kinds of things, or if you want to use it for even like a little wallet, the 10.5-inch square option would work also. So that was my inspiration jumping off point. Sandy says, hello from Austria. I love that we have our international quilters. Bridget from Belgium, that's right. And Denise says hello from Johannesburg. And let's see, Sandy says hello. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Nancy says hello from Tucson, Arizona. We are glad that you're joining. So the original 5 by 5, so 5 squares across, uses 25 squares. My little sample here is 4 by 4 using 16 squares. We'll see what size this one finishes out so you can maybe pick up an option. So make sure you make a note someplace that the sample that I'm working on is only 4 by 4. It uses 16 squares, and that the original is 5 by 5, okay? So that you don't get confused. The idea is that we're making a square. And the fun part of using all the different fabrics involved in the kind of the Christmas genre of fabrics. Now, when I was putting this together, my original bag, I decided that I would try something different. be outside your comfort zone. I tend to be a person who presses my seam allowances to one side. And in this instance, I wanted my bag to not have any bulky spots in it, which really does reduce the bulk and the kind of the intersection. It kind of just spreads out the thickness, because yes, you're still going to have seam allowances that are going to double up, but I pressed all my seam allowances open for something different. And it does take a little bit more time. And a case like this where the bag isn't going to take stress like a quilt on a bed, pressing seams open doesn't mean that you're going to have a weaker seam or anything. But I tried it out just to see, because I know I have quilters talk about it all the time. And I'm 50-50. There may be times when I decide that pressing open is good, and I'll let you know about it when I try that out. But so in this case, all my seam allowances are pressed open. Whether you do a random placement of your pieces or you do a very planned placement of your design, quilter's choice on how you want to do that. Deb says, good morning from Pennsylvania. And we've got Linda popping in from Savannah, Georgia. We are glad that you're joining in. Okay. Now, once you get to your piecing done, you've got two options. My original bag just has a stabilizer inside of it. And at this point, that's where I put interfacing. It's a fairly firm interfacing, fusible interfacing on the backside of my piecing so that it has more structure to it. If you like the quilty look, I've given those instructions also. And I'm just going to walk you through real quick if you want that more structured look, it's in step 2. So we're going to take a little step away from our bag here. This one is just a top fabric and inside fabric. You put batting in the layers, just like you're making a little mini quilt. You quilt it, and then you bind it. And this is a good place if you are still practicing. Hopefully you've been practicing your machine quilting skills. This is a good place to practice. Maybe you want to learn to do a little tighter meander or a tighter design, a little closer kind of quilting. This is a really good place on something small that's easy to maneuver under the machine. It's a great way to practice your machine quilting. So a small little bag like this, the two 10.5-inch squares, your batting layer, put them together, machine quilt the entire square, and then put binding on it, just like it's a large hot pad or a oversized mug mat, okay? And at that point, then stop, because we're going to do the folding, but I need to catch you up on this one. This one is done just a little bit different. I'm kind of giving you a 2-for-1 here. In this one, I didn't want the extra bulk of the batting. I wanted to try it out without that. So I have my backing fabric, which ends up being the interior of my bag. And I have not quilted this yet. That's intentional. I'm going to place my right sides together with my patchwork top. And then I'm going to stitch all the way around. Linda says, good morning from Karnak, Texas, I believe. Let's see. Deb from Linfield, Pennsylvania. You guys get me all over the map here today. I love that we're all joining in on our quilting Christmas adventures. The lining of the bag is just stitched to the 10-inch squares, or the 5-inch squares, so that you don't have batting in there. The stabilizer creates more body in our project, and we're just going to stitch all the way around the outside. Let's see here, quick, get this lined up. If you're a pinning kind of person, you can pin. Remember, this is, it's a Santa bag. It's not like it's heirloom patchwork. We don't have to be super, super precise on everything. I am using a 1/4-inch seam on the outer edge. You do have to remember, let's see, take my needle up here. I'm going to start down the side a little bit because we are going to turn this right side out. So leave an opening space for yourself and stitch a 1/4 inch all the way around the outer edge. And like I said, it doesn't have to be super exact, doesn't have to be super perfect. We're probably trying to get these done in a hurry because letters to Santa have to be, whoa, my fabric slid just a little bit there, but that's okay. That's live sewing. We are going to be creating kind of like a mat is what we're going to be to have here. And then I quilted it after I turned this right side out. So it's just a little bit different construction than we're used to. Sometimes I think outside the box because I want to get done in a hurry. Plus, I wanted to hang this on the wall and not have on the front door as if Santa was coming. And I didn't want something heavy on the door and bulky. And I cut my backing just a little bit small here, but we'll be okay, I guess. Get this all the way around the edge. Remember when you're putting your fusible on the back, and I use a Crafter's Choice. It's just it's called a firm fusible for crafting. So any firm fusible interfacing will do for the backing on this. As a garment sewer, I wasn't really into using a lot of interfacings. And for this project, it does work pretty good. I never wanted things to be hard and crunchy very much in garments, but structure in a bag is a different thing. Okay, here we go. And my fabric slid, so I kept my 1/4 inch seam on the bottom there. So maybe pinning is a good thing at times. Okay, leaving an opening of about 3 or 4 inches so that I can go in. I'm going to diagonally trim my corners. I'm going to trim this extra seam allowance here too that I had. Diagonally trimming them will help reduce the bulk at the corners when I try to turn this right side out so that it all this extra fabric in the corners doesn't have a place to go unless you trim out that corner. And one little trick that I do when it comes to turning things is to press my seam allowance open. So even if I'm just pressing one of these pieces to one side, it will help with the turning process. So I'm going to come in with my iron and press my seam allowance open. And along this edge. Oh, my iron didn't have time to get hot. Okay, that was a tip, but my iron's not hot yet. So we're just going to go ahead and press. I'm going to finger press my opening area here. This one area I always do in advance, even if it's just finger pressing, because this is where the opening is at. And it's hard to get in here later to give it a seam allowance. So if I kind of give it an idea of where that edge needs to be, then when I need to get to close that opening, it already knows, oh, I need to lay here. So just finger pressing, scoring it along that fold. There, you can see how it's got a memory of where it's going to need to be. Then I'm going to turn this entire thing right side out. Wanda, I got to see it really quick. Wendy is from Richmond, Virginia. Was watching. Lisa is watching. Oh, that one's already got you, Lisa. I got you twice. Okay. It's kind of hard to keep up with the people's names coming in and sewing at the same time. But we love that you join in with your ideas on how to use our projects in a multitude of ways. And I love the idea of making it into a ruler holder. That, in fact, I have some really cute sewing room prints that I don't know exactly how to use. I might just have my next project in mind. Perfect thing to use that for, because I love the little sewing room print with spools and things on it. We always fall in love with fabrics that we don't always know what we're going to do with, but then a project comes along and says, that is just what I want to be. Okay, making sure you really push the corners outward so you get all the way to the corner. And then take it to the iron, which now my iron should be nice and hot. There we go. And I'm going to finger press this first so that I get this all the way out to the edge. Threads involved there. And that interfacing really does make a nice sharp edge on the outer portion of this. Now, oops, I have one corner I didn't quite get popped out. The one closest to the opening. Here we go. Now, again, get it ready to fold. Rolling that so that when I take it to the iron, it'll be ready to fold. And we do that on all four corners. Oh, my corners didn't want to stay popped out. Now I use a light color on the inside just because it's easier to see the contents on a bag if the interior is lighter color. Sometimes people prefer darker colors. They don't really want to, they think that it might get messy or dirty on the inside. Something like this isn't going to get used super heavy. So there we go. A light color fabric on the inside makes it easier to see the contents of what you have inside the bag. Now, when I was thinking about this, my grandkids would love to have stickers and markers and all kinds of wonderful things probably added to it for their letters to Santa. So that would be something else you could put into the pockets if you were giving it as a gift. And then pressing all the way around the edge is going to be important because you want to have this as flat as possible so that you can quilt the layers. You wouldn't have to quilt if you don't want to. That's always an option. And something like this could just simply be, I did a simple crosshatch on mine. I put on my walking foot and just did diagonal lines corner to corner. And then every so many, I think I did from corner to corner on each of the squares. So I just did a track all the way around in order to quilt the entire thing. So whether you want to use this as the place to do some fun machine quilting, again, you can quilt on layers without batting. That's okay. It's not a requirement that we have. This is more like what we would call a summer quilt without a heavy batting layer in between. We just have structure. On this, you might want to add just a few pins in order things don't slide. What I did is I stitched around the perimeter and then I went diagonally across the project, corner to corner. The fun part about having, if you have on your machine, on some of the newer machines, they have either a projection line or a laser line, and you can aim the laser line for the next corner that you're headed to, and you don't have to draw the lines. But a simple chalk liner, something like this, or a ceramic pencil would be the perfect thing to draw your lines so that you can quilt this. You could also just do right next to a 1/4 inch off of each of the squares if that's how you prefer to quilt it. But you decide how you want to finish your project. Once you either have your little mini quilt, quilted and bound version with batting, or you are to this step without batting, the next thing to do after you have all of your decorative part done is to fold your bag. And we have in the instructions to fold, to divide and fold it diagonally so that you have, I have to think about it now, this way. No, this way. Okay. Fold the bag pretty side, whatever you want to be the exterior, toward the inside. And you're going to measure thirds. So in this case, I need something to mark with. My finished one. Now, I didn't write down the actual number because if you quilt it with batting, it may shrink up a little bit. And if you don't use batting, it's going to be a little truer in size. So I just noted that you're going to divide this into thirds. So measure your finished diagonal. And I'm going to measure mine here quick so that I can divide it up. It's a fun number. So 25 is my number on this one because it's smaller. But you can also simply do a fold to find the thirds. You want to divide it into 3 even sections. So by doing a simple fold, I can do the same thing. So you don't have to get crazy with math if you don't want to. Or you can pull out your calculator and try to be really super exact. And then I need a ruler because my thirds are here and I need to draw stitching lines up to within about an inch and a half of the top. Now, the reason why there's a little differential in the distance from the top, if you'd like your flap to be a little longer, then only stitch up to within an inch and a half. So what we're doing is we're going to put side seams here and here, but we're going to leave a little bit at the top so that we have a flap to close our bag. So by using that marking at a third, we're going to use a ruler where we can line it up with the fold and then mark to within an inch of the top, or an inch and a half if you prefer. And the same over here. I've got this lined up with my ruler in the fold and here so that I have my stitching lines. Okay. And you would do the same thing if you were using the 10.5 inch square. But remember, divide this into 3 even sized parts. Okay. Christine from Boise, Idaho. Great project to leave to grandchildren. Gifted my oldest granddaughter her Christmas tree skirt, and now she'll get the Christmas bag. Perfect. You were just decking her out for Christmas. How wonderful to share the holidays with her. Okay. Let's see. Some more came in. Lisa says, good morning and love the bag. Deborah says, hello from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. First time catching this tutorial. We are so glad that you joined in. Sioux Falls, South Dakota really isn't too far from where I live, at least the Midwest. We've had our fall color change outside and the weather's getting a little chillier in the mornings. So making us think like it's Christmas or I'm preparing for Christmas. Okay. At this point, we've got our marked lines. We do want to do a little bit of a reinforcement at the top, depending on if your machine. One way to do a reinforcement is to, let's see if I get my pen here, is to stitch or start down from the top a bit, going in the direction of where you want, where the top of this is. So I'm going to start stitching. I'm going to put an X. Start my stitching here. I'm going to sew out to this spot, then pivot and go back the other direction. It's a great way to reinforce. Unless you want to do a little bit of back stitch in that space. Everybody has a different approach to kind of reinforcing their stitching. I can make sure that my needle's in the center position. We're so used to stitching on a 1/4 inch seam to make sure your needle's in the right position for you. Okay, I'm going to stitch up to where I want my bag to, that flap to be. Then I'm going to pick up my presser foot, twirl it around, and then stitch down the marked line. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. I'm going to stitch back towards the center to do that reinforce. So that's the bottom of my bag. Do that on the other side also. And about right there. And I'm doing about an inch of extra stitching here just to give that a good reinforce. From my garment days, I was always big at back stitching, but I realized back stitching can be kind of heavy and all in one spot. And if you had to take out stitching. If you had to take out stitching, it's not fun to tear out, but one little extra line of stitching isn't so bad. So that's why I've kind of picked up this idea of just turning and stitching back over where I started, because that back stitching is just, it's great in garments, just not so great in quilts. Okay. Take our directions out of the way here. Now comes the fun part. I need to trim my threads quick. Always remember to clean up as you go. Here's where the magic of this little project comes in. These outside wings are going to overlap and become the pockets on both sides of our bag. And the center is going to be the middle of our bag. Okay. So we're going to put my hand inside so I have some place to lodge, and I'm going to turn this triangle back on itself. These are such fun little bags. I remember making those small ones and thinking, I could make these all day. Okay, there's the first turn, okay? Then we're going to go to the other side, and we're going to do the same thing. Turn it back, making sure that we get all the way to the stitching. That's why you need your hand in the inside to kind of poke out that corner. Now, it's not a perfect math, okay? Just realize close counts in this thing. It's a little like horseshoes. If it's not absolute perfect, no one will know the difference, okay? Okay, here we go. Now, I've got one side, I've got the other, I've got my pieces pushed out there pretty well. I'm going to take this to the iron and give it a good press. Okay. That extra structure from the interfacing is really nice and crisp, almost like a mailing envelope. So here we go. And then I've got my pocket on one side. I do need to close this opening by hand. You can't really reach that from the machine. I apologize for that, but there's really no way to tackle it. And we've got a pocket on this side. Again, we have to close this. So this is one seam, one hand seam from here around to the point and then back up the other side. It's not a lot of hand stitching, just a little. It's okay. You can all handle it. And then once you have that stitched in place, then we're going to come in and turn down our flap for one side and then the other side. And now you see why I left that inch of space so that our flap will have a nice turn. And I'm going to give that a quick press. And it takes a little bit of heat to get through those layers. Now, how you finish your bag is totally up to you. You can embellish as much as your heart desires. On mine, I decided that I wanted some rickrack. So in the store, this is called the 1/2 inch rickrack. This is what I grew up with. The little tiny was the mini, but I never knew exactly the sizes. This I applied along the flap to identify the flap if you want. I machine stitched that in place. I used just a little bit of glue stick to hold it in place. My pieces are turned under, so they're just kind of around the corner and tucked in, machine stitched around both sides, and I did the flaps on both sides with the rickrack. You can leave that off if you prefer. I used a plastic snap for my closure, and you can use Velcro. This one's done with Velcro, hook and loop tape, Velcro tab. I placed a button on the top to cover up my, to kind of let you know that's the opening. But Velcro has worked for, I don't know, 15 years on these. So you can use hook and loop tape if you prefer, or you can use the plastic snap thing. If you've got small fingers using it, either one works. If your kid needs to work on snaps, then put a snap on it. You just pierce through the fabric with the awl that comes with it. The two little pieces of the snap fit together, and you just crush the little pin on the back, and your snap goes on perfectly. So if you have kids that need to practice snaps, that might be something. If you want to have, if you've got hook and loop tape already in your sewing studio, go for it. Use hook and loop tape. The last thing that I did, now you might be done if you're creating this to be your ruler holder for going to retreats and things. If you prefer, I did this little strap on there. The instructions tell you how long I cut my pieces. It's just 2 rectangles of fabric, right sides together. I stitched down the long sides and then turned it and top stitched it and then inserted it at an angle. So kind of think about how you want it to hang up. Insert it at an angle, and I had the flaps open when I inserted it, and I just stitched through this corner to hold the strap in place. So that can then just hook onto the door or the doorknob of the house where Santa's letters are going to be written. But if you're making it smaller like this, this is the 5x5. This happens to be 4x4, and these from 10.5-inch squares. You can create a little pouch for your letters to Santa, your Christmas cards, or whatever project you want to use it for. I guess for going to retreats, holding your ruler. This might be a great place even to be able to store your rotary cutter when you're traveling, because if you reach into your bag, you don't want to have that blade exposed. Great way to organize your crafting things. Denise says hello from Chicago. Darlene says hello from Crown Point, Indiana. And we have Michelle watching from Alberta. We are glad that you're joining in. Barbara says, good morning. Love the bag. It's exactly what my children were asking for. Are you kidding? Anxious to get started. I didn't know they were asking for it, but you know, kids come up with ideas and they spur us as quilters to create something. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking, this could even be a cute little makeup bag for travel. It could be a little bag to put all kinds of different things you want to organize when you're traveling, those small things. I'm not saying maybe jewelry, because it's not going to stay put in there, but some of those other small things, like, you know, the cords to everything that when we travel, we always have a cord bag. And if you wanted, you could add a snap in the center portion here for this to close also. So if you want to add a snap, you can easily reach the area to put a snap in the center. So each side could close and the center could also close up if you don't want something to slide out while you're traveling or taking your bag somewhere. Terry says, would you mind showing how you turn the handle right side out? I do know that the tip yet. I did not create 2 pieces to stitch as a handle, but we can do a small version here quick. Let's do I think it was like 3 inches wide. Can't remember exactly. I made it, but I don't remember. Okay. 1.5-inch strip. Okay. Help if I had a ruler with the right markings on it. Okay. So when you go to create the strap, and you're going to have a longer version of this, but the same technique holds true. I'm not going to close up the short ends. I'm going to stitch only the long ends. So let's go about doing that, and we'll show you how to do that turning. Whoops, I forgot my 1/4 inch. Just like I said, make sure you put your needle in the right place. Okay. Get that out so we get the right size. Or my strap will end up being a different size altogether. There we go. I did do the 1/4 inch seams on the sides. And there are a couple of tricks. I guess I can. Thanks for reminding me to show this. I forget sometimes that as a seamstress, I learned these tricks a long time ago, but not everyone has that same background. So here we go. Even though this is shorter, works the same way. So When you get done sewing your 2 long strips together, my tip is to take it to the iron and press your seam allowances open like this. It's just the same idea as the outer edge of the bag. It helps in the turning process. This is something my mom taught me a long time ago, and I used to think that it was a silly step. But then when I realized when I turned it, things seemed to pop into place. It wasn't so silly anymore. Okay, so now I have my fabrics are right sides together. I did 1/4 inch seam on the long sides. I've pressed my seam allowances open, at least on one side. You don't have to press both of them, but on one. Then I need to find a safety pin. This is where that emergency sewing kit that you have with safety pins, or if you use safety pins for your basting, this is where they come in handy. I place a pin on one end so that I can put the nose of the pin into the interior pocket that I created. So between the stitching lines, I'm going to force that pin down through the strip so that I know there are other ways to make straps. This just happens to be one way to do it. So if you have another, you are welcome to use your technique. I'm just going old school, I guess. And you turn the entire long piece right side out. Sometimes having a larger pin does help a little. This happens to be a small one, but it's what I had on hand. And then you can take this to the iron to flatten so that you can press it nice and neat. Do a little finger pressing. This one's just, there we go. Once you kind of get it started, you can also use a turning tool if you happen to have something handy to help you kind of push out the seam allowances to each side. Just work at it slowly and turn it right on the edges so that you have your strap all pressed nice and neat. And then I stitched about 1/4 or so from each side just to keep that seam allowance nice and tidy. And it gives the handle a little bit more structure. So top stitching it, and I did mine in red. And then you fold the entire strap, and of course your loop would be longer, so that you have your cut edges together. And you can zigzag those if you like so they don't ravel. Santa bag doesn't get overworked a lot. So then I inserted this inside the bag, kind of at an angle, thinking gravity is going to pull it at an angle to be interesting. Then I opened up my bag, and then I just stitched along the fold where my flap of my top of my envelope there is, stitched along that, and then the little strap would be, or long strap would be inserted. So perfect. Terry says, thank you. You're welcome. I'm glad that I made sure I would go back and hit that so that everyone would learn how to do it. Like I said, there are many ways to do a type of strap on here. You could even use a piece of, if you're a bag maker and you have some strap left from making bags, you could use a pre-made woven piece of strap to add to it. You wouldn't have to make it out of fabric. See, lots of ways to approach. Bridget says, thanks. Great project as usual. We are glad that you're joining in, having some fun, thinking about maybe making the letters to Santa. We are going to be doing at least 1 or 2 more projects, kind of Christmas related soon. So join us then. Thanks for joining me today.